On Wednesday, November 18th, I was privileged to observe Mrs. Young's third grade class during a rather unusual assessment, and later that day I had a discussion with Mrs. Young about her assessment practices. The assessment was called Adverb Scoot. It required the students to read a sentence, identify the adverb, and record it on a record sheet that had 24 spaces. What made it unique is that at every desk was one sentence card, and the children stood up and walked around the room, rotating around to each desk on Mrs. Young's commands until they had visited all 24 desks and completed filling out their record sheet. Each sentence card was numbered so the children could put the adverb in the appropriate space on their sheet. The children moved quickly and quietly during the test. I enjoyed watching them and asking them questions. I asked, "How do you know that the answer is quickly?" Or, "What did you think inside your head that helped you select the word sometimes?" The children responded that they had asked themselves which word told them where, when, or how. If it was correct, Mrs. Young would say, "That's right. Blank is an adverb because it tells us and should say either when, where, or how." If the child gave the wrong answer, she would tell him which part of speech the word was and then ask him a leading question, giving him another chance to get the right answer. The children corrected their papers with a colored marker by putting a star on a correct answer or by writing in the correct answer above their answer. Then Mrs. Young collected their papers and explained to the kids that she was using this test not to grade them, but to let her know what she needed to teach them tomorrow. In our discussion, Mrs. Young explained that she is required to administer certain standardized tests during the year, and that she prepares for them by using formative and summative tests. She said that Adverb Scoot is a formative assessment. Hall states that formative assessments inform teachers about what students already know and what they don't know to support future learning, which describes this situation exactly. When I asked Mrs. Young how often she uses formative assessments, I was surprised to learn that although it's very time-consuming for her, she uses formative assessments daily in her classroom because she believes that they help her differentiate instruction for her diverse students. She has some students for whom English is a second language. One student, who uses a wheelchair to get around, has physical and cognitive delays. Some are beginning readers. The others range from a first grade reading level to a 12th grade reading level. Mrs. Young said that meeting these various needs is the most difficult part of her job. I fully support Mrs. Young's choice to use an active, formative assessment for her third grade students. I believe that the choice of this diagnostic assessment will help her to reach her goal of guiding her instruction. As Obie and Sapp tell us, diagnostic assessment must be the first step in differentiating instruction. I particularly enjoyed that she intentionally designed Adverb Scoot to let the children move around in order to give them physical relief from sitting still all day. I reflected on how Mrs. Young had darted around the classroom during Adverb Scoot, helping one child or another and making sure that they could read the sentence. Because everyone was already moving around, her movements were just part of the flow, and her guidance and support didn't interrupt the assessment. I also realized that while the test would assess their knowledge of adverbs, she was checking out many other things while she moved around and helped the kids, which made me appreciate her method even more. Hall tells us that in formative assessment, it is arguable that the most important assessors are the students themselves. This supports Mrs. Young's format of having the students correct their own tests. She further reinforced the learning with her leading questions during the correcting process and by modeling good thinking patterns to determine which word is an adverb. As I said in the introduction, I had asked the children questions about how they chose their answers, and they had responded by telling me that they were looking for words that explained where, when, or how. This let me know that Mrs. Young had prepared the children in advance to succeed on the assessment. Crowley states that giving a learner instruction before he is asked to perform allows teachers to see how he can use that learning to be successful in completing a task. Crowley calls this a dynamic cognitive assessment because the learner must think about the learning and successfully use what they know to adapt to a new situation. This sets up the child to succeed, which I wholly support because I know that success breeds success. Mrs. Young had taught the children a solid strategy for determining which words are adverbs. It was simple and clear. Wells states that when teachers make the rules of learning explicit, it helps them improve. I was also impressed that Mrs. Young told the children that the purpose of the assessment was to guide her teaching. I believe that this helps to put the students at ease and to value the activity. It's valuable to me when my teachers make an effort to match their teaching to my specific needs. This seems to be a basic practice for establishing good student-teacher rapport. If the teacher consistently teaches above or below your current level of understanding, it's easy to lose motivation for learning. I have new vocabulary for thinking about assessment. I can clearly define in my head standardized, diagnostic, formative and summative assessments, and design ways to use them in the classroom. Obie and Sapp taught me that in order to design a formative assessment, there are 4 steps. Select a construct on the nature of the learning process for consideration. Divide the construct into sequential, quantifiable, measurable categories. Administer a test to evaluate performance in these categories, and develop a program to remediate the deficit in the test-related skills. I have no criticism of Mrs. Young's choice of assessment. I thought about improving her assessment by having the children discuss their answers with a peer, but I realized that she wanted to evaluate each individual child's knowledge, and so I think that a discussion should be a part of another activity. Mrs. Young has been teaching for 29 years and is a leader for innovation in her school. She is well respected by the parents of her students, and the principal often sends her to workshops and seminars, and she teaches the other teachers the new information when she returns. She recently attended a seminar on applying technology in the classroom. For these reasons, I consider her to be a master teacher, and I have no suggestions to improve her methods.